important Hunafa were four. This is one of them, but the most important were four. And we have a number of details about them. Ibn Hisham narrates a very beautiful story. He says that before the coming of the Prophet ﷺ, the Quraysh held a huge festival outside of Mecca. And they invited the entire city to celebrate with their idols. And they exalted their idols, they sacrificed, they did tawaf around their idols. When the entire village, or the entire city of Mecca left, four people found themselves remaining behind. And they realized when they found themselves remaining behind that they are all upon the same wavelength. They were too embarrassed to tell people about this. So they didn't want to go. When they let the whole society leave, the city's empty for a few days. Lo and behold, they thought they're going to be alone. Four people were there. So when the four people realized that we're all on the same wavelength here, they said, let us befriend one another. And let us not tell our people about our affair, that we disagree with this idolatry. These four people were number one, Waraqa ibn Nawfal ibn Asad. Who is Waraqa ibn Nawfal ibn Asad? Well, if we mention one more person, Khadija binti Khuwaylid ibn Asad. Khadija binti Khuwaylid ibn Asad, Waraqa ibn Nawfal ibn Asad. So Waraqa and Khadija are cousins. Waraqa and Khadija are cousins. But Waraqa was around 50 or 40 years older because his father was the eldest and Khadija's father was the youngest of the brothers. So he is around 40 years older than Khadija. So number one, Waraqa ibn Nawfal. Number two, Ubaydillah ibn Jahsh. Ubaydillah ibn Jahsh is the Prophet's cousin through his mother. So the Prophet's aunt is Ubaydillah ibn Jahsh's mother. Aunt meaning Abdul Muttalib's daughter. So Abdul Muttalib's daughter, the Prophet's aunt, is Ubaydillah ibn Jahsh's mother. So he's the Prophet's cousin. Number two, Uthman ibn al-Huwayrith. And number three, Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufayl. And he is the cousin of Umar ibn al-Khattab ibn Nufayl. Umar ibn al-Khattab and Zayd ibn Amr. Amr and al-Khattab are brothers. So Umar is the first cousin of Zayd ibn Amr, but once again, Zayd is like 40, 50 years older than Umar. So these are the four. Once again, Waraqa ibn Nawfal, Ubaydillah ibn Jahsh, Uthman ibn al-Huwayrith, and Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufayl. So these four said, let us befriend one another and not tell anybody about our affair. We all know that our people are upon misguidance, that they had left the pure religion of Ibrahim. Are we going to do tawaf around a stone? Are we going to sacrifice to a stone that can neither benefit us nor harm us? Let us search for the original religion of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Let us search for the Hanifiyya. And that's why Allah calls Ibrahim Hanif throughout the Quran. Allah says that Millat Ibrahim Hanifa. In over 8 verses, Allah calls Ibrahim Hanif. And the Arabs knew that Ibrahim was Hanif. And therefore, these people are saying, let's search for the Hanifiyya of Ibrahim. So they all split up and they all left Mecca for a while, searching for the truth. As for Waraqa ibn Nawfal, he eventually chose Christianity. And he studied his books, and he learned Hebrew and Aramaic, and he rejected the religion of the people of the Quraysh, and he was a convert to Christianity. Waraqa, of course, we know his story, that he was an old blind man in his 80s when the Prophet ﷺ, at the age of 40, heard Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. And everybody knew that this was a learned scholar. He's an eccentric academic for the Meccan standards. He reads and writes. He's a genius. If you can read and write in Mecca, you're a tenured professor. You're a big shot there. Okay? He reads and writes, and he speaks Hebrew and Aramaic. So when Iqra came down, Khadija held onto the hand of the Prophet and said, let's go to Waraqa, because he knows what's going on here. He knows this stuff. This is not a part of our civilization. We've never seen this before. Let's go to Waraqa. And so Waraqa was the one who recognized, yes, this is what we've been waiting for. And subhanAllah, it's very interesting. If you ask the average Muslim who's the first convert, they say Abu Bakr. People jump over. No, the first convert is Waraqa. After Khadija, we can say the first male convert is Waraqa, before Abu Bakr. Because even before the da'wah began, even before the Prophet realized he's a prophet, Waraqa understood what's going on. Because the Prophet did not understand. What did I see? What was this entity that came to me? And so Waraqa said, this is the same entity who came to Musa, came to Jesus. This is Jibreel. This is the Namus, he called him. So it's the secret companion. He's the one whom Allah sends to the prophets. And Waraqa was the one who said to him, how I wish I were a young man. I've been searching my whole life for the truth. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? He must have spent 60, 70 years waiting for the truth. And now, when he's just about to die, he hears the Prophet. So he regrets. He said, how I wish I were a young man now, so that I could support you when your people persecute you and expel you. And this was the first shock to the Prophet. My people will expel me? My people are going to oppose me? And because Waraqa at this time knew the history of the previous nations, he said, yes, never has any prophet come with the truth except that his own people opposed him. So this is Waraqa ibn Nawfal, and Khadija says, فَمَا لَبِثَ. Just a little while after this conversation, he passed away. The first Muslim who died in Mecca was Waraqa ibn Nawfal. Ubaydillah ibn Jahsh has the saddest story. Ubaydillah ibn Jahsh converted to Christianity, and he was a cousin of the Prophet. So when the Prophet began preaching, he accepted Islam. And he married Salama. And they then migrated to Abyssinia. So he was a Muslim, but he became a murtad when he reached Abyssinia. And he reverted back to Christianity. And that was when, of course, Salama had to leave him, and he died shortly after that. And then the Prophet proposed, and Salama became his wife. And there's a whole story there about Ubaydillah ibn Jahsh, which we don't have time for, but one simple benefit that we can derive from this, and it's a very important benefit. If you become murtad in a land that is not ruled by the Sharia, this is your freedom. You cannot do anything. So the whole question, I'm saying this now because our religion is being attacked. You guys have a blasphemy law. If somebody leaves a religion, you have to cut his head off. That's what we're told. The response is very simple. No. Our Sharia tells us that in lands that are not ruled by Islam, Ubaydillah ibn Jahsh converted back to Christianity. Nobody harmed a hair on his head. This is the land of Nikis, the land of Najashi. Do as you please. It's not the land where the Sharia is going to be implemented. So in lands other than the land of Islam, there's no question the Sharia would say that we don't implement that. And of course, whether we implement or not, even in Islamic lands, there's a whole long conditions for that. This is the second person, Ubaydullah ibn Jahsh. The third, Uthman ibn al-Huwaydith. Uthman ibn al-Huwaydith, he too accepted Christianity. So out of these four, three accepted Christianity. Waraqa eventually accepted Islam. Ubaydullah accepted Islam, then went back to Christianity. Uthman remained a Christian till he died. And we don't know whether he ever heard the Prophet's message, because Uthman ibn al-Huwaydith left Mecca never to return. He left Mecca. Now, when did this incident take place? Probably before the birth of the Prophet. Or if it took place when he was alive, he would have been a little child. Because you do the math, Waraqa is in his 80s when the Prophet is 40. So when did this take place? Maybe when Waraqa was in his 20s. So the Prophet, most likely, again, this is all assumptions, most likely this scattering took place before the Prophet was even born. Now, Uthman ibn al-Huwaydith traveled to Rome, and he eventually made his way up into Caesar's palace, and it is said he became an interpreter because they needed Arab interpreters, so he accepted Christianity, and so he was given a lot of money, a lot of prestige, and he became a Christian, and he died a Christian. So these are the three out of the four. The last one, Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufayl, has the most interesting story, and the Prophet ﷺ had a number of encounters with him. Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufayl did not accept Christianity or Judaism because he was not impressed with either of them. And it is narrated that he told both the Jewish rabbis and the Christian priests that he met that this is not the religion of Ibrahim, and you know it. This is not the religion of Ibrahim, and you know it. So Zayd ibn Amr returned back to Mecca, and he told the people, once he had now become mature and respected, "O people of Quraysh, there is no one left upon the religion of Ibrahim in this whole city other than me. All of you have rejected the religion of Ibrahim." And Asma binti Abi Bakr, the older sister of Aisha, Asma is around 20 years older than Aisha. She's way older than Aisha. Asma binti Abi Bakr, Aisha, remember, she was a very young girl. So Asma binti Abi Bakr says that she remembers as a young child seeing Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufayl rebuking the Quraysh for worshipping idols, for giving meat to the idols, for trying to bury their daughters alive. And in fact, and subhanAllah, how beautiful is this? When any Qurashi wanted to kill his daughter, Zayd would say, "Give her over to me, I will take care of her and I will bring her up. She will become my daughter." So he would adopt all of the daughters that the Quraysh wanted to kill. And this shows us his generosity and his kind heart. And he forbade any daughter to be killed and said, "Give them to me and I will raise them in my household." And he refused to participate in any of their idolatry. It is authentically mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ met Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufayl when he was a young man, when the Prophet was a young man, before the prophecy began. And he asked him, "What is masha'nuk? What is the matter between you and your people? Why is there this animosity?" So subhanAllah, this shows us the Prophet, even as a young man, he wants to study, wants to know. He's inquisitive mind. Probably as a teenager, we don't have an age here. We can imagine maybe 17, 18. The Prophet is asking Zayd as a young child, "What is the matter? What do you believe? What do they believe?" And so Zayd ibn Amr would explain to him that I cannot worship idols. I cannot do what these people are doing. And the Prophet found a kindred spirit, because as we know, the Prophet himself never worshipped an idol. He never bowed his head in front of an idol. He never sacrificed meat to an idol. All of these things he himself did not do. So Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufayl, as we said, he continued upon this religion, and he died 5 years before the Prophet began preaching Tawheed. 5 years. His son, Sa'id ibn Zayd, is one of the companions that unfortunately we as Muslims don't know much about, even though we should, because Sa'id ibn Zayd is one of the 10 who were promised Jannah. This is one of the big names, but unfortunately we don't know much about him, meaning this society, not that we don't know from the books. Sa'id ibn Zayd was one of the 10 who are Ashara Mubashara. This is his son. So one day he said, "O Messenger of Allah, you know my father, you remember my father, and you remember what he was upon. What will be his fate in the akhirah? You can tell me." He's loving, he wants to know, "Ya Rasulullah, what's going to be the fate of my father in the akhirah?" So the Prophet ﷺ said, "He will be resurrected on the day of judgment, his own ummah." He is a one-man ummah, without any prophet, because he was such a pious person. And when he went back from Isra wal Mi'raj, you know the famous journey, we're going to talk about that, he said to Sa'id ibn Zayd, I entered Jannah and I saw your father, Allah had blessed him with not one but 2 gardens. So this shows us that even before the coming of Islam, people managed to enter Jannah because they rejected idolatry. Because their fitrah, their innate nature told them that something is wrong. So Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufayl is a one-man ummah. This is a trivia question. Which ummah is there without any prophet? And we say the ummah of Zayd ibn Amr ibn Nufayl. Okay? This is an ummah which is a one-man ummah without any prophet.